must be a record. That's good. That's real good for all we get in each year. So this is pretty cool. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the second inductee this year to the Boudreau Hall of Fame. One of the finest relief pitchers in Major League history. A man who saw the role of the relief pitcher evolve from a 3-inning save. You probably had some 4-inning outings out of the bullpen. I know you did early. To the specialized approach to bullpen use created by and taught by Tony La Russa and all the managers and pitching coaches who followed. An inductee into the Baseball Hall of Fame, well-deserved. A 22-year pitching career. I think everybody in this room knows quite a bit about him already. We're going to learn more about him now. Our latest Pitch and Hit Club of Chicago, Lou Boudreau Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Rich Goose Gossage. Chicago White Sox, Chicago Cubs, New York Yankees, Padres, you name it, he's been a winner everywhere. Here's Goose.
Thank you, Tom. You know, Terry, I remember back, how many years ago? 1970, 40-some years ago, I ran into the house. My father had passed away when I was a junior in high school. And he always said, Rick, you're going to play in the big leagues someday. We grew up Yankee fans out in Colorado. We didn't get that much exposure out in Colorado with baseball. And we watched the game of the week every Saturday with the Dizzy Dean and Pee Wee Reese, if you all remember that. And I remember running into the house upon graduating out of high school. I ran in the house and I said, Mom, I got a job. I got a job at the park where I grew up playing my youth baseball. And I ran into the house and, Mom, I got a job. She said, well, that's great, Rick. She said, but this gentleman over here has a job for you too. And it was a scout, Terry, from North Platte, Nebraska, a guy by the name of Bill Kimball. And I know that Roland will remember this. And it was the first time that I knew that I'm going to need somebody to help me out negotiate a contract. They offered me $5,000 and I held out for $8,000. And I ended up signing that contract with the White Sox. And there began my journey and my quest to make it to the big leagues. I didn't know what I was getting myself into back then. I looked at these guys like Mickey Mantle, who was my favorite player and my idol that I grew up idolizing, and all those great Yankees and even a lot of the great players that on other teams. And I thought, geez, I'd never met a big leaguer in the flesh, and I thought these were fictitious cartoon characters that never existed. And I promised myself that day, I said, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but I know this, that I'm going to give it my best shot. There aren't going to be any shoulda, woulda, couldas, or if, ands, or buts. I'm going to give it my best shot. And I remember I had never been out of the state of Colorado. I show up in my orders came that I was to report to the rookie league down in Sarasota, Florida. And that was the lowest classification of baseball. It still is and was at that time. I remember getting down to Tampa, and we landed in Tampa. Sarasota was the old spring training game of the White Sox, and that's where the rookie league started. And I remember it was June, and I'm getting off. We didn't have jetways back then. I remember getting deplaning, and they rolled up the stairs to the jet, and we were all deplaning, and all of a sudden I get to the door, and this blast of heat hits me. And I'm walking down the stairs, and I said, wow, those jets of that plane are hot. And this guy stops dead in front of me, almost knocked him down the stairs. And he looks back at me and he said, son, he says, I hate to inform you, but those aren't the jets of the plane. Welcome to Florida. Colorado, we're very arid out there. It's a high desert, and we don't have much humidity. So that was one of the first experiences. The second experience that I remember, and I was scared to death. This is the scaredest I've ever been, and that's saying something because I've been scared on the mound and taking that field many times. And it was the Chicago White Sox, and that's why I have such a special, memories here. I loved the White Sox. I loved that grand stadium, Old Comiskey Park. And I remember Roland Heeman, my first general manager. Chuck Tanner was my first manager. The greatest player that I ever saw play the game, and the greatest season I ever saw, single season I ever saw a player have, was Dick Allen. And one of the greatest pitching coaches that I ever ran into was Johnny Sain. And that's a lot of great firsts. And I was just in the right spot at the right time. Running into these guys had such an effect and such an impact on my career. I can't put into words what these guys have meant to me throughout my career. I remember when I was in Appleton, Wisconsin, and this was 1971, and I was having a great year up in Appleton, and that was single A ball. And I remember getting called into Joe Sparks' office, and I was invited by the White Sox to play in the Cubs-White Sox exhibition game. Cubs-Sox game, crosstown rivals, and they had that one exhibition game during the season, and I was going to pitch in that game. Well, Larry Licklider was the equipment manager for the Sox at the time, and when he issued me my uniform, a whole uniform. I had the first time I ever put a big league uniform on. When I started out on this quest, I said the only thing I want to do is put a big league uniform on one time. And little did I know that that one time was going to turn into 22 years. But this first time that I put on that uniform was at Wrigley Field during the Sox-Cubs game. And I had never been so scared in my life. Little did I know it was going to get a lot scarier. When Larry Licklider issued me that uniform, along with it came the hat, a Red Sox hat, and it was about 3 sizes too big. I could take that hat and spin it around on my head, let go of it, and it would go around on my head. And I went back to him and I said, Larry, Mr. Licklider, I said, I need a smaller hat. He said, get out of here, kid. He says, put the damn hat on and go and take care of pitching. Don't worry about the hat. That's the way those old guys were at that time, and I was a rookie. I was a young kid. I wasn't even a rookie yet. I was still wet behind the ears in professional baseball. So I got dressed, and I'm thinking, God, I don't know how I'm going to wear this hat. Well, as I got out of the clubhouse, and there's a big catwalk at Wrigley Field where players come out of the clubhouse and walk across, and it was my first sight at the most people that I've ever seen in one place in my life. The most I ever seen up until that point was about 2,000 people at a minor league game. And so as I walk out, I walk down the tunnel, off of this catwalk, down through the tunnel, and as I get closer to the field, I hear this noise that I've never heard before. And I thought, what is that rumbling? And what's that? That's a weird noise. And it was just a loud hum kind of. And as I popped out into the dugout, I went, oh my God, that's a crowd. That's crowd noise. I've never heard anything like that. Well, I get into the game, and I'm down in the bullpen first. And as I start forward with my arm, this hat falls, covers my whole face. Well, I can't see where I'm throwing the baseball. I'm throwing 100 miles an hour. And I really don't quite know at that time, as being a young kid, quite where it's going to go. So the first hitter who is that I face? I come into the game, my legs are shaking, I have never been this nervous in my life, and I'm thinking, I don't know how I'm going to pitch, because I can't, it's like being blindfolded. The first hitter up is, you guessed it, Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks. And I'm thinking, oh my God, when he came up, I've got about 5 minutes to sit there and think about how it's going to feel to kill Ernie Banks in front of all these people. And I am trembling, I'm shaking, my whole body is just like, and every time I let go of this ball, it falls right in my face, the hat. So, Ernie steps in, and I'm thinking, oh my God, Mayor Daley's over, sitting in the box, all the dignitaries. I've never been in a situation like this with so many important people in one place in all my life. And not to mention, I'm facing Ernie Banks. So the first pitch is, I let it go, and sure enough, this thing falls right. I can't see, it's dark, it's blackout. I throw this pitch, Ernie pops it up, it's right over by Mayor Daley's box, by our dugout, by the first base dugout, and it's the biggest out I've ever gotten in my life. And I have never been so happy. I got 3 up, 3 down. The next day in the Chicago Sun-Times, in the back page, a full picture, I still have it to this day. My mom kept a great scrapbook of me early on, and here I am with this hat, pulled down, sitting on my face like this, and but that was like, welcome to the big leagues. And you know, so many great things happened to me here in Chicago, so many firsts. You know, playing in that grand ballpark, Dick Allen taking me under his wing and teaching me how to pitch, from the greatest hitter that I ever had the privilege of playing with or seeing play. I saw a lot of great players toward the ends of their careers, but I never saw a man hit a ball like Dick Allen could hit it. And you know, it was an education that all the money in the world couldn't pay for. To run into Johnny Sane at that juncture in my career, I had a great fastball, and but I had no semblance or no idea really how to throw a breaking ball. And to run into these guys, Roland Heeman and then Chuck Tanner, teaching me about how important the fans are to this game was an amazing experience. The 5 years here that I played with the Sox, you know, I was immediately put in the bullpen. At the time, in 1972, my first year, I got invited to camp as a non-roster player from that great year. I was a 20-year-old kid coming up from Appleton. That's the highest classification of baseball that I had played up to that point. I was invited to camp as a non-roster player and ended up making the ball club. And there my journey began. And Johnny Sane taking me down in that bullpen every day and just spinning my breaking ball. Working on my straight changeup was the first thing that they worked on. And I picked that up like the first time I ever saw it, and that was when Chuck and Roland came down to, when I was with the Appleton Foxes. We were in Cedar Rapids, I believe, and you and Chuck came down. Johnny had showed them how to show me a straight changeup. And that's really what allowed me to have that great season, that 18-2 season in Appleton. But you know, it was an amazing journey. I look back at it. Chicago. I remember as a player when the new Comiskey Park was built. I looked across. I was signing some autographs for some young kids right outside the clubhouse, or right outside the stadium at the new one, and the old one was still up, and I was standing outside signing some autographs, and I looked across, and the front of the stadium had been torn down, and there was just a little window there that I could see through, and I could see the old scoreboard, and you know, that grand deck, that second deck of Comiskey Park, and I just started crying.